published, 5:44 EDT, the 3rd of May 2018, updated, 7:26 EDT, the 3rd of May 2018. A former university worker was today jailed for at least 28 years after he tricked his female boss into sharing a meal with him and murdered her when she rejected his romantic advances. David Browning, 52, knifed Gillian Howell 15 times in the chest, neck and abdomen as she screamed, UBD. In a struggle that ensued at her home in Brighton last October, he had arrived at the 46-year-old payroll manager's house with a curry, flowers and a bottle of wine that they ate together before he launched the horrific attack. As she lay in a pool of blood on their lounge floor, Browning, who claimed Ms. Howell had been unfair to him at work, scrawled "bully" across her forehead in marker pen. The 52-year-old wrote other messages on the walls of her home, including one that blamed the murder on Sean MacDonald, a friend of Ms. Howell's and the mayor of Worthing he believed was in a relationship with her. The victim's friends and family gasped and shouted yes yesterday as a jury rejected Browning's claims of diminished responsibility and convicted him of murder. David Browning, 52, pictured, left, after his arrest and, right, smiling as he leaves court earlier this month, has been found guilty of murdering his boss Gillian Howell, 46, after scrawling the word "bully" on her head in marker pen. Browning also left messages on the wall of Ms. Howell's, pictured, Brighton home, including one blaming her friend Sean MacDonald, pictured, for the crime. Gillian Howell, pictured, had tried to help Browning after he suffered depression when his father died. Graham Trembath, defending, said the killing was inexcusable and had ruined the lives of many people, not least his own family. It is a fact that he was diagnosed as suffering from a depressive condition. It was clearly triggered by his father's tragic death. It does not excuse what he did. Judge Christine Lang QC said, Gillian Howell as a much-loved sister, cousin, niece and friend. She was 46 years old when she was murdered by you in a savage attack, sustaining 15 stab wounds. In the final moments of her life she desperately tried to defend herself. The terror and trauma in her final few moments is unimaginable. She said he had then defiled her body by scrawling "bully" on her forehead as she lay dead, when it is clear that nothing was further from the truth. She was a compassionate woman, a quality that cost her her life. She took time to listen to you and find ways to help you. You developed a crush on her that developed into obsession. What led to you kill her was a very human cocktail of emotions, desire, jealousy, frustration and anger. As a result of your callous action, many people have been affected. The impact on her family and friends is devastating. I take into account that you have been diagnosed as suffering from depression following the death of your father. I accept it played some part in these events, no doubt causing you to become obsessed. Browning drew up a plan to kill his boss at the payroll department at the University of Brighton, buying a 10 cm lock knife and shotgun with which he intended to kill himself. An uneaten meal of curry and wine was found at the house where Ms. Howell was killed. Browning, right, attacked Ms. Howell, left, who he had accused of bullying him. Browning used this knife to stab Ms. Howell 15 times in the chest, neck and abdomen. He also posted a series of suicide letters claiming he could no longer put up with the intense workplace bullying. He arrived at her home on the evening of October 25 with flowers and a bottle of wine and a meal. The pair chatted. The court heard that around 10:30 p.m. she told Browning he ought to think about leaving and going home. He told the court, I said, I can't go home, she said. Why? I said, because I've posted my suicide notes. He said Miss Howell told him she was going to take him to hospital and went to get her trainers and jacket, and as she bent to tie her shoelaces he stabbed her. Browning said, I was behind her. I felt this swoosh feeling come over. I pulled the knife out and stabbed her in the back. She fell towards the sofa and as I stabbed her in the throat once, she grabbed knife with her hand and screamed, UBD. I said, sorry Jill, this is what mental health does to you. Afterwards he daubed other messages around the house in spray paint in which he blamed Sean MacDonald, the former mayor of Worthing, who he mistakenly believed was in a relationship with Miss Howell. Police footage shows the moment Browning walked into a police station and confessed Ms. Howell, 46, was Browning's boss at the payroll department, having been employed in 2015 to improve an unproductive department. She told friends she was frustrated by Browning, who had worked there since 1989, and another male colleague who were resistant to changes she wished to bring in. In statement made after the court's verdict yesterday, Browning's family said, "We would like to offer our condolences to the family and friends of Gillian Howell. Depression is a devastating mental illness, and David was desperately affected by the traumatic death of his father, causing him to react so dramatically out of character. We love David and his family will always stand by and support him." Staff said Miss Howell had picked on Browning, shouted at him and belittled him in front of colleagues, but she had also offered to help him because he was suffering from stress and anxiety following the death of his father. His plea for help is understood to have been especially poignant to the Samaritan's volunteer, who herself suffered depression in the wake of her own father's death just a few years before. Elaine Rowe, one of 7 employees in the payroll unit, said if Browning and Ms. Howell disagreed there could be fireworks. She said, if they did not agree she would not take that very well and shout, intimidate or be very rude. It was in front of the whole finance office. It happened quite often, every week, every other week. But Miss Howell was also mindful Browning was suffering from depression and she felt if she offered help and understanding it might ease work tensions. In June she invited him out for drinks after work and their pair went to the Signalmen pub in Ditchling Rise in Brighton. Police found a note Browning had written wrongly implicating another man in the murder. Browning posted this picture, showing a bully being stabbed. After he carried out the attack, Browning was grateful for the support and texted her after saying, "I adore you personally and professionally. I am there for you anytime Dave X. But over the coming weeks, his condition worsened and he confessed to having suicidal thoughts. Despite suffering severe anxiety, depression and having suicidal thoughts, David Browning found it easy to get a firearms license and buy a lethal 12-gauge shotgun and cartridges. Under law, police interview any applicant for a firearms license and also check criminal records and medical history before making a decision on whether to issue one. Browning was asked whether he was suffering suicidal thoughts, stress, depression, anxiety, dementia or any other type of mental illness, to which he replied, "No." He then provided police with his GP details so officers could contact them to double-check whether they had any concerns. Browning was granted a 5-year firearms license on July 30, which would have expired in 2022. Shortly afterwards he bought a 12-gauge shotgun, 50 shotgun cartridges and a lock knife later used in the murder, paying around £1,000 in cash. Despite being referred to the University of Brighton's occupational health team in September, it seems no alert or warning was issued to the authorities. Concerned Mississippi Howell told friends she was going to invite him round to her house for a meal to cheer him up. Claire Taylor, a close friend, was concerned by this step and felt she might be overstepping her professional role as his boss. The invitation went ahead and Browning took wine and flowers and Ms. Howell cooked and the pair shared a chicken curry and wine and chatted afterwards. The following day, Browning, who was married with 2 children, texting, "Thank you for tonight. Can I just say now we're not full of red wine. I think you realize what you mean to me as a person and a friend. I will continue to be inappropriate at times to make you smile." It is clear Miss Howell's attempts to lend a helping hand to her deputy to help him through his depression were almost immediately misconstrued by Browning. Ms. Howell realized too late that Browning had become hopelessly and dangerously attached to her. On one occasion Browning told her, "You must never leave the university or get a boyfriend because I need you." The court heard Browning began to suspect Miss Howell was in a relationship with another man, Sean MacDonald, the former mayor of Worthing, when in fact the pair were just close friends. Attempting to put some distance between them, Miss Howell recommended he see a counselor from the university's occupational health team, which he eventually agreed to. But after the counseling session he felt worse telling his boss, The problem is I'm not okay. I feel doomed. Browning told Counsellor Jane Faulkner he had suicidal thoughts and wanted to die, but at no stage did the university inform the police or his GP about his deteriorating mental health. In the run-up to the killing, Browning came up with a plan to implicate Sean MacDonald in the killing. Browning was said to be resisting changes his boss wanted to make in the payroll department at the University of Brighton. In an elaborate ruse, he submitted a form to the university pension department requesting a change of beneficiary on Jill Howell's pension to make Sean MacDonald the sole benefactor. However, the pensions department became suspicious because the signature did not resemble Ms. Howell's signature. His last appointment with the counsellor was on October 24, the day before he killed Ms. Howell. On October 25, Browning again went round to Miss Howell's house in Five Ways, Brighton, bearing wine and flowers. Only this time he arrived with a 10 cm lock knife with which he intended to kill her. The family of Gillian Howell have said her death was incomprehensible and they may never come to terms with it. The family of Gillian Howell have said her death was incomprehensible and they may never come to terms with it. After learning David Browning had been found guilty, a crowd of relatives gathered on the steps outside Hove Crown Court on Wednesday while one of Ms. Howell's nephews read a statement which said, "The last 6 months have been truly awful. Jill's death was shocking and incomprehensible, and we are still struggling to accept and make sense of it. We are pleased that this process is now over, but it doesn't change anything for us. It doesn't bring Jill back and we miss her so much. Their deep sadness and emptiness we feel will be with us for the rest of our lives." The statement paid tribute to beautiful, gentle and kind Jill, who they said they will carry in their hearts forever and remember as a loving and caring sister, the best auntie in the history of the world ever, and someone who had tremendous honesty and integrity. The authorities who investigated and prosecuted the case and friends who supported them helped to restore their faith in humanity. They added. Professor Deborah Humphreys, Vice-Chancellor of the University of Brighton, said the entire university was shocked and saddened by Ms. Howell's death, adding, "Jill was a much-loved, compassionate and highly respected colleague and she is greatly missed. Her death and the circumstances surrounding it have made this an extremely difficult time for colleagues who worked closely with both Jill and David Browning, and the university is continuing to provide support for all those affected." Former detective says the man who tried to kill him for murdering his best friend is evil. The former detective has voiced his anger at an evil killer who tried to frame him for his best friend's murder. Sean MacDonald said he had never met or even heard of David Browning until a police officer knocked on his door on October 26, last year. Not only did he have devastating news that his soulmate Gillian Howell had been stabbed to death in her home, but also that clues at the crime scene indicated he had been involved. Gillian Howell's killer tried to frame her close friend Sean MacDonald, left for her killing. Mr. MacDonald, a serving Sussex police officer for 30 years, learned graffiti had been sprayed on the walls of her house which blamed him for her death, and a letter left there indicated he had been complicit in the crime. Browning had stored his number in his phone just days before and found his home address, but never contacted him. Documents had also been forged on the morning of the murder to try to change the sole beneficiary of Ms. Howell's pension fund to be Mr. MacDonald, to support the claim in the letter that the pair were planning to split the proceeds after her death. Mr. MacDonald's emails and phone records were searched to rule out any trace to Browning, who later admitted being behind all of this because he wanted to set up the serving counsellor and former mayor to be the scapegoat. Mr. MacDonald said he'd never heard of Browning until police contacted him after Gillian's death. He had even asked a friend to send a vitriolic letter to Mr. MacDonald 2 months after the murder to try to further implicate him in the killing, the court heard. Speaking to Press Association, the 60-year-old, of Durrington in West Sussex, said, throughout his evidence, he had to step back on claims he had made about me, about Jill. In the end, he confirmed that we had never spoken or met and I was not in the least involved. He also painted Jill to be this demon and a bully at work, but no one has a bad word to say about her. In the end, he had to admit that he wrote bully on her forehead, but she wasn't one. He added, she was not like that. She was an absolutely lovely person, and I was not in any way involved. He didn't seem to be able to give a reason for killing her, but the prosecution thought he was jealous of my relationship with her, and I think this too from what I've heard in the trial and from what other people have told me. He is just evil. Mr. MacDonald denied Browning's claims that Ms. Howell had bullied him at work. Mr. MacDonald told how he completely broke down when he had to give evidence and has struggled to come to terms with her death, adding, "I'm generally quite robust, but I think in that situation anyone would be affected by it. It was a natural reaction to what I was having to talk about." He said he and Ms. Howell was best friends and companions, but he insisted their relationship was never intimate, adding, "This is where Browning got it very wrong. There was never anything sexual." 1989, David Browning starts working at the University of Brighton's payroll department. 2015, Gillian Howell takes over the department, becoming Browning's boss. June 6, 2017, Browning and Ms. Howell go for a drink at the Signalmen pub in Ditchling Rise. Afterwards he texts her to say, "I adore you personally and professionally." July 9, Browning applies for a shotgun license. July 13, Miss Howell cancels drink with Browning. August 2, Browning texts Ms. Howell to say what a wonderful lady you are. August 3, Miss Howell invites Browning over for dinner, and he later texts, "I think you realize how much you mean to me as a friend." August 8, Miss Howell contacts the university's occupational health department seeking help for Browning. August 20, Miss Howell tells friend Russell Nall that Browning had told her she must never leave her job or get a boyfriend. September 16, Browning pays a deposit for a second-hand 12-gauge Browning shotgun from C&H Weston in East Street, Brighton. October 24, Browning hires a rental van from Choices. He later told psychiatrists he wanted it to conceal the shotgun. October 25, Browning is invited to dinner for a second time. 11 p.m. to midnight, Browning stabs Ms. Howell 15 times. October 26, hands himself into police asking to be sectioned.